Hey everybody, welcome to the not so instant reaction of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. My name is Aaron, welcome to the stream. We've got a screen situation over here. If you are not joining the stream live and you're watching on YouTube back later on, no problem. Hello to you as well. Hello to you if you are listening on audio download, because this will go out at some point later this week for audio listeners to hear. Hello to Mostly Racing in the chat immediately. Hey Nick, how are you doing? I know you had an operation over the weekend, or you were in hospital at least. I hope you're all on the mend, my friend. Thank you for the congratulations on the 200 subs. Yes, we've reached 200 subscribers on YouTube. Very humbled. And all I can say is a big thank you to everyone who subscribes and tunes in to listen to me waffle about Formula One, to be honest. I mean, it is a passion project. I love the sport. Even in its bad times, I say bad times, when things aren't going so well from the drivers that I support. It's still an amazing sport to be a part of. And Nick has given the race a slightly harsh 1.5 out of 10. Would have been a 2, but the post-race stuff kind of annoyed me. Yeah, we'll be getting into that. If you are joining now, leave your race rating in the chat. I'm going to give it a 6 because we know what Jeddah can throw up, and it did a little bit, but then it very quickly died down. There wasn't a battle between the two Mercedes drivers to make it interesting. I think the problem we have at the moment is, on race pace at least, a lot of the cars are kind of too far apart to make it fun. And it's just, they're just sort of, the field spread is a little bit too big, and there just seems to be a few things at play. Maybe with a few upgrades coming as we hit the European season. Obviously, we've got a month in between Australia and Azerbaijan for the teams to knuckle down and work on a few bits and pieces. So maybe that's where Aston Martin will do the damage and really close up to Red Bull. But we'll have to wait and see. SHT in the chat, hello to you. FIA being absolute bunch of jokers again. Yes, we're going to get into that as well. But we're going to kick things off. And we're going to be a positive beginning here. Sergio Perez, perfection in Jeddah. A brilliant race. Christian Horner called it his best win of his career so far. I don't know about that. Monaco was pretty special. Although once he got to the front after the red flag, it was just don't crash, basically. The Singapore win was pretty good as well, actually. And of course, his first win in Sakir. At one point, he was last. So you can't do much more than that than win having been last at the end of lap 1. So it is a very good win. It's an accomplished win. It's the win of a driver who wins multiple races. It's not someone who has sort of lucked into wins, if that makes sense. Some drivers have their wins fall in their lap and they almost win on accident. They don't lead from the front. This is the first time Checo has turned pole position into victory. And of course, his only other pole position was at Jeddah last year. And he's basically gone out and done the job in the opening 2 races that Red Bull pay him to do, which is finish second to Max Verstappen when, Max Verstappen wins the race, and finish first when Max Verstappen doesn't win the race. And he's done both of those things so far this season, and he's looking really, really strong. I mean, realistically, is he capable of taking a title fight to Max Verstappen over the course of a season? I don't know. Let's get the chat on the screen. I don't know whether he's strong enough to take it to Max over the course of a season, but he's put himself in a good position. He's only 1 point behind the Dutchman at the moment. I don't think he's sort of... If you think back to when Mercedes were super dominant, they had Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, who... Hamilton, of course, is an extraordinary driver, but Rosberg had enough pace on occasions, plenty of occasions, to give Lewis trouble, and he wasn't afraid to go to the dark side of tactical thinking, especially in 2016. He really got under Lewis's skin, as much as it annoys me to this day that he managed to win that World Championship. He did absolutely everything he could to put Lewis off his game, and he got the fortune as well with the reliability. And that's the sort of thing that Checo's going to need to go his way this year. He's going to need Max to have multiple failures to finish. He's going to need Max to get caught up in silly accidents, and maybe even Checo's going to have to have that collision with Max, and Red Bull are going to have a big problem on their hands. But we've seen how it plays out at Red Bull before. If you think back to 2018, the Ricciardo Verstappen collision at Azerbaijan, and look who came out on top from there. So maybe if you're in a Red Bull, it doesn't work out well for you if you collide with Max Verstappen. SHC in the chat says, I called it. Alonso managed to get his 100th podium of his F1 career. Yes, it wasn't without the FIA being the FIA, I suppose. Mostly Race says, I'm always harsh on races. I have a weird way of rating things, and I can't be stopped. The unstoppable force that is Mostly Racing, nerfing race ratings. But that's fine. I mean, we all want something different from a race, don't we? I mean, I'm realising now as I get a bit older that I want my drivers to do well, and I actually really want a fight at the front. It doesn't matter necessarily who it is. I just want a close fight at the front. I suppose we all want that, but then if there isn't that close fight at the front, I can't invest myself in the race as much. There isn't that almost a reason to get excited and go, okay, neither of these drivers are my favourite, but let's pick someone to back, and it's about having that jeopardy for that win and everyone putting it on the line in that sort of sense. I think Checo will pick up multiple wins this year, but there's not much doubt Max is going to dominate. Let's hope the racing behind is good. Yeah, at one point we had Aston Martin, Ferrari and Mercedes very close, but then after the safety car, they just spread out. And in race pace, Aston Martin have the edge on Mercedes. Mercedes are strategically more effective than Ferrari, and it looks like the Mercedes is a slightly better race car than the Ferrari. I mean, in Bahrain, the Ferrari was slightly stronger. I think it's going to ebb and flow between those two for being fourth best. And bear in mind, these are probably the two biggest beasts in terms of teams in Formula One. But the biggest beast in terms of drivers at the moment is Max Verstappen. He's probably going to dominate most of the season, but something that has been noted by a lot of people is his sourness. And Jos Verstappen as well. The Verstappens need to learn how to finish second. And you might go, well, they're all there to win. Of course Max is going to say he wants to win. Yes, they are all there to win, and no one likes to come second, especially to a teammate. But if you think back over the years, the greatest champions, so I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton in this. Who else? Maybe Niki Lauda. There'd be a few others somewhere as well. Maybe not the bunch from the 80s of Mansell, Senna and Prost and Piquet. They didn't like losing to each other. But, you put them alongside a certain teammate. So maybe Senna alongside Berger when they were at McLaren. They knew finishing second wasn't necessarily a disaster. It's about that percentage game. And this is something that is still, I think, a flaw in Verstappen's game. He hasn't learned how to come second. He hasn't realised just how valuable it is. He is in his mid-20s. He's so hell-bent on winning. I get that. I mean, I'm competitive. I play to win. And I hate losing. But there comes a point in your frame of mind where you realise, actually, this isn't so bad. If he was coming second to, let's say he was teammates with Lewis Hamilton or Fernando Alonso, if he was coming second to one of them in the same car, yeah, I'd get it, because there'd be a bit of needle, there'd be that real competitive edge. He knows he's got the edge on Perez, let's be honest. We know it too. Without that problem with the drive shaft in qualifying, Max is taking pole by more than half a second and he's running off into the night and hiding and then only appearing when the checkered flag comes out. It would have been utter destruction in terms of the rest of the field. Perez would have finished some 20-25 seconds behind without a safety car. Alonso would have been 40 odd seconds back. The Mercedes would have been a minute plus behind. So he needs to relax. And he needs to realise second isn't terrible. And Jos Verstappen needs to grow up, because a guy in his 50s, I'm guessing Jos Verstappen is. Let's do a quick Google. If he's in his 50s, I mean, a guy of his age, he's 51. A guy of his age needs to understand that actually you need to congratulate people. And it was so disgusting, I think I'll call it, that he didn't have the humility to celebrate with Perez. And I've mentioned him already, Nico Rosberg. He has said that Max Verstappen needs to be more gracious, and that extends to his dad as well. And I was talking to my wife about this a few minutes ago before I came on stream. It really doesn't make you like people. You can see the way certain drivers are because of their upbringing and their background. Anthony Hamilton in his son's worst moment in Abu Dhabi in 2021, still had the courage, the humility, the sportsmanship to go over to Max and to Jos and congratulate them. Okay, yeah, it wasn't their fault, but he could have stood there and gone, well, you don't deserve to be champion because you never deserved to win that race. But there are levels to this, and you see how happy Sergio Perez's dad is for Max when he wins, and other drivers. And just, it's a community sort of feel, and the Verstappens don't seem to either want to fit it or they just don't fit it at all. That's why I love the Schumacher-Hakkinen years. They had so much respect for each other and wouldn't be unhappy if they finished second to one another. Yeah, Hakkinen and Schumacher. I mean, they weren't teammates, but they were rivals to the end. Obviously, they'd grown up being rivals together, but you could always see the respect there. And Schumacher has said himself, Hakkinen was the driver he feared the most because Hakkinen had that pure speed. The thing that let Hakkinen down was the mental game in terms of going against Schumacher, and we saw that in 99 and 2000. He had dips in form, but when he was on it, he was absolutely sensational. Just watch the 2000 Belgian Grand Prix, not just for the overtake where they go either side of Zonta, but Hakkinen had the lead, lost it, and still manages to come back because he could. Okay, you needed the car to do it, but he had the skill and the talent behind the wheel to put Schumacher under pressure. Let's move away from the Verstappens and move on to Fernando Alonso. First of all, well done to Fernando Alonso for 100 career podiums in Formula One, a rare group. Although Fernando should already be well into this group, let's be honest. The guy has so much talent, but he's never been able to put himself in the right car at the right time, and finally he seems to have done so. But it's still good to see him at the front, enjoying his racing. And I know Matt GP is a big fan of Fernando. Go and follow him on Twitter and subscribe to him on YouTube as well. And he said it was nice to see Alonso, even if this is his last contract, going out on something of a high. And yeah, I think he will go out on a high, unless Aston Martin produce a complete dud next year. But this podium nonsense, it was so frustrating because it's just the smallest thing, and this is what completely undid Ocon's race. The pit crews are so drilled to when that car comes in, they react, they respond to that stimulus. It's so ingrained in their brains. It's very difficult for them to not do it. And I get what they're trying to do with the time penalties, get them served in the race so they're not added after the race, so then drivers don't have a chance to pull away or anything, and you can circumvent it. But you can circumvent it in the race anyway. So, you've got to drive through, you can have a long lap. At Jeddah, you really could have a space where they do the long lap. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is maybe turn 27, go around the outside of the runoff there, maybe at the other end, but obviously they're carrying a lot more speed into that section, and we've seen cars go off. To have a long lap sections, maybe they can work that in, because then that is 5 seconds gone there and then, and the job's done. Then they lose the track position, and then they just go from there, and you don't have any of this pit stop nonsense. And the FIA don't necessarily need to get too involved. It can be officiated in a slightly more hands-off way, but still being hands-on, if that makes sense. But the whole process was just ridiculous, wasn't it? So he's served the penalty. They've decided, yes, that's fine, all good, everything okay, keep going. And then the guys at the VAR of Formula One are looking at it and go, oh, no, we're not quite sure about this. Actually, we think the rear jack has touched the car. That's working on the car. I mean, define working on the car. I mean, the rules are so flimsy and so poorly written. They're so convoluted as well. If you try to read them, you are immediately lost because of all the gobbledygook. They do need to simplify them. They need to make them more straightforward, more followable for fans. They need to remember, and this isn't a criticism of Drive to Survive fans of the sport, so people who've got in through Drive to Survive, but they're still learning. So all of these complex rules, they even trip me up. And I've been watching the sport since '99, so that's more than 20 years, nearly 25 years. And you've got fans who are coming into the sport who maybe only been watching it a year or two, and maybe a rule hasn't come up. Like the whole thing that kicks this off is the lining the car up in the grid box, and that's where Ocon's nightmare started in Bahrain. It doesn't make a difference. If you're too far forward, that makes a difference because you can gain ground. But if you're just to the left or just to the right, it makes no difference. We've seen drivers on the front row point their car almost 45 degrees within their grid box to either make a beeline for the racing line or try and cut off the guy in second. It's part and parcel of the game. You're going to try and make a start, and whatever you do, you're going to be moving around. It doesn't matter where as long as you're in your box roughly, within reason. If they're starting in the middle of the track with just one tyre in the box, and it's clearly ridiculous. But you can't. These cars are so big, and they're so wide, and the tyres are so big, you can't always see because the drivers are so low down. It's just an unmanageable situation. And I saw a picture of the grid, the left-hand side of the grid, the Alonso side of the grid. And I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter too. I think it was Alberto Fabregas or something. I mean, I might be assuming a Spanish surname to him there. But there was multiple other cars that weren't dead in their box. So it's just like, whatever next from the FIA. SHT says they took so long. Yeah, it just took them way too long to deal with it. And this is the problem. We've seen it before where they've taken ages to deal with a penalty and actually hand it out, and it gives a team or driver an advantage, or they can circumvent it and then give the penalty after the time limit. I don't think there should be a time limit to penalties, really. I mean, if you've made an error, you've made an error in the race. There should be no time limit to it. But obviously, they've got to classify the results afterwards and submit them. So, then you impose a time limit of X amount of hours after the checkered flag has fallen, after the race is finished, barring appeals or whatever. So, something within the race, and this is something that happened in '98 with Schumacher and Ferrari, and this is partly how he ended up winning the race in the pit lane at Silverstone, because of a time frame that they have to give the penalty. Ridiculous. I have heard of such nonsense in Formula One. In football, in other sports, if you make a foul, the foul's given right there. If you give away a penalty, the penalty's given there. Although with VAR, that's not quite the case anymore, and everyone's ever quite sure. Let's move on to Mercedes. Let's talk about them, because for a week and a half between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, it was doom and gloom. It was literally Groundhog Day at Mercedes all over again. But it turns out the car isn't as bad, and they've decided to change the direction of the car. And Toto Wolff isn't too sort of proud to say, the car has to look a certain way. He even said on Sky Sports, if it looks like a double-decker London bus, he doesn't care as long as it's fast. And, quite agree. It doesn't matter how the car looks as long as it's fast. If it's slow, then it probably looks bad because it's not hitting the lap times, is it? So it's got a little bit better for Mercedes, 4th and 5th, and George Russell qualified pretty well. There is a discrepancy between the two drivers at the moment in terms of confidence within the car, which is a strange thing to say about a 7-time world champion. But confidence is everything. We see that in Formula 2. Even Jack Doohan has come out and said that he's not got the confidence in his Virtuosi car, and it's a spec series. It's the car he drove last year, and it's the same team. Go figure. But these drivers are so highly strung in terms of their tuning and how they interact with the car. As we hear the commentators say, you've got to be at one with the car. And if you're not quite at one with the car, it can be a little bit of a struggle. And of course, Mercedes thought they had a podium for a couple of hours before they had to give it back, which was... I saw the picture on Instagram today where they covered up the trophy with P4. So it's things like that where they can make a bit of a joke out of it. It's quite fun. So a much better weekend for Mercedes. Ferrari, I mean, just whatever next with Ferrari. They've got a semi-fast car. They've got good drivers. Potentially a world champion in Charles Leclerc. And they've got the speed in qualifying, but none of the race pace. And the car seems likely to blow itself up at every given opportunity if they don't turn the engine down. It's really, really strange. And they said they'd fix this issue of reliability over the winter. They clearly haven't. And they're still terrible on the hard tyre. So a lot of head scratching at Maranello. And they were, I don't know if they were fourth fastest car across the weekend in Jeddah, but they were definitely fourth quickest on race day. And if Stroll had finished, he'd have finished ahead of both of them as well, I think. I think the reason he didn't, well, partly overcut working, put the Ferraris ahead of Stroll, but I think he was also managing an issue. SHT says Ferrari is just struggling. Yep, they are the struggle bus, and they are a bus because buses, at least in London, where I grew up, and close to where I work here, they're red. Buses are red. And this is not looking great for them. No, it's really not. And it's just another, almost reset for Ferrari. You're constantly asking, when are they going to get it right? Last time they were in, the last three title bids they've had in 2022, in 2018 and 2017 have largely been undone by unreliability and driver error. So maybe there's something within the way that they're functioning as a team, or that's causing these drivers to make errors, or something that's inherent within their cars. That's Vettel going off at Hockenheim. That probably wasn't anything to do with the car. That was probably just a simple driving error. But Leclerc, Paul Ricard last year, was he having to push the car a bit too hard because he needed the points and he made a mistake? Happens, but they can go hand in hand. And let's move away from the top teams. Mostly Racing says, shame for the season 2. We need Ferrari to take it to Red Bull. We do, but I don't think they've got the car to do it, sadly. I mean, I'd love to see Leclerc and Verstappen go at it wheel to wheel the whole season. That would be great. The first couple of races of last year were fantastic. And when they had some battles on the track, they kept it fairly clean. But they just don't have the car to do it. SHT says he saw details that Ferrari was 0.7 a lap slower in Jeddah compared to 2022. That is a huge margin to have lost. And considering if they've lost 0.7 and they were pretty much neck and neck with Red Bull last season at Jeddah, and Red Bull are, they've lost almost 1.5 seconds to Red Bull in 12 months at one circuit. That could put it all into perspective. So let's finally move to Kevin Magnussen and McLaren. I know they're not, but they are slightly connected in that Kevin Magnussen drove his first races for McLaren. But Kevin Magnussen ended up where McLaren should have ended up. It was, I say, driver error. Definitely driver error in Lando Norris's case in qualifying, and he knows it. He admitted as much on Saturday. But Oscar Piastri, unfortunate with the front wing damage on the opening lap. I think if Piastri keeps his nose clean in that situation, he can probably keep himself in and around the top 10 and maybe steals that final point. But in the end, it was Kevin Magnussen. And he started, 12th or 13th, if my notepad's in the other room. He started 12th or 13th, somewhere around there. Let's get it up. I got an adapter that means I can have two screens working from one PC now, which is lovely. So now I can do things like this. So we'll go to 2023 season on the Formula One website. We don't want race result. We want qualifying. Kevin Magnussen qualified 13th. Yeah, so he ended up behind Charles Leclerc after the Ferrari driver's grid drop. So he did a great job. He came past his teammate and he got past... actually, Tsunoda jumped a lot of them because of the safety car timing. Kevin Magnussen got past Zhou Guanyu. That was the other driver he got past. So that move on Tsunoda was made because the McLaren was out of the way. And obviously the Alpines that were there as well, but they were never going to be caught for 8th and 9th. Super move, actually, wasn't it? Shame about the camera angle. They followed it from on the pit straight, and they were looking at the cars as they headed into turn 1 from behind, when we really should have seen them on the brakes front on. Maybe even the camera angle the one that they have at the start as they come down towards turn 1 would have been good. But there was a really cool bit of driving between the pair of them, and obviously Tsunoda was disappointed to lose out. And Kevin Magnussen, that's a great move from him. Valuable point for Haas, and that takes them into, I believe it would be something like 8th place in the Constructors. 7th place even. It puts them level with Williams. Although I don't see why either of them... probably be best second car, wasn't it? Because they both have a 10th place, and Hulkenberg finished, 12th yesterday? Don't know. Can't remember. Anyway, really important for them, and sadly, it's McLaren who are bottom of the Constructors' Championship, which is something I never thought I'd say. But the car is looking better. I think that they must be cursed at Bahrain, because they looked much better at Jeddah last year as well. So not all doom and gloom for McLaren. There's still more to come. The team I do worry for is AlphaTauri. They looked, without the safety car getting Tsunoda up the order, they looked well short of pace and speed. So that is my not so instant reaction to the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. Now, if you want more from me, if you are one of those 200 subscribers and you like my content, first of all, thank you very much. You can get my top 5 F2 drivers of the weekend, which is coming out tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have the driver ratings for Formula One. So for the Jeddah Grand Prix. Then later on in the week, I will put together the teams ratings. And then on Saturday, we've got Formula E coming back. A series where we just don't know who's going to win the race. So if you want a few surprises, watch Formula E. And if you don't like the sound, just put it on mute. So, and anyway, you get Jack Nicholls on commentary, and who was it? Oliver Askew's been on comms, and he's been excellent as well. They've had Nelson Piquet Jr. on there, and I'm not the biggest fan of the PKs for multiple reasons. So yeah, but he still did a good job. But Jack Nicholls is brilliant on commentary there, and the drivers are doing a brilliant job. So come and join me for the Formula E watch along on Saturday. I don't know what time that is. I think it's like 5 in the afternoon. Let's have a look. What time will that be? It's in Sao Paulo. So we've got races. It's round 6. Yeah, it'll be like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So come and join me for that. There's lots more to come from me this week. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up for me. Always helps the algorithm. Mostly Racing is 2 of my 200 subscribers. You are literally 1/10 of my subscribers, and I love it. Thank you very much for 200 subs, everyone. Subscribe if you're new for more Grand Prix content, and thank you very much for joining me. Thanks to SHT and Mostly Racing in the chat. If you are watching after the fact, leave a comment with your race rating, and I will see you all again very soon for some more Grand Prix reaction. It's bye for now.